Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Igor Kule and this is Eastern Europe Review, a joint production of BELSAT TV and TVP World. In our program we discuss events across Eastern Europe with a primary focus on Belarus, Ukraine and Russia. In this episode, we will be covering the following topics. German MP exposed for exploiting Belarusian political prisoners. What are the consequences?
This is just further proof that the labor was forced.
Criminals in Russia offered a choice: join the war instead of facing trial.
If you commit a crime, if you kill or if you rob, all you need to do is sign a contract and you'll be released.
ChasivYar, Ukrainian forces struggle to hold the line with dwindling ammunition amid relentless Russian advances.
Fire! They use armored vehicles and aerial bombs. They have more manpower and weapons too.
A German MP is facing conviction after journalists revealed that he had been exploiting Belarusian political prisoners on his plantation. The investigation has uncovered that the prison received more funds from his company than the prisoners themselves. How did this politician turn a blind eye to human rights abuses and what consequences is he facing now? Stay with us for the full story.
German businessman Jörg Dornau, who is also a member of the state parliament of Saxony from the far-right Alternative for Germany party, has used the labor of Belarusian political prisoners. His company, TUT.BY, received 1,500 hectares of land in the Horadnia region in Belarus for permanent use. In that location, Jörg Dornau's company grows vegetables, mainly onions. Journalists from Reform.News discovered that the German politician had entered into an agreement with the detention center in the city of Lida, regularly using Belarusians convicted on political charges to work on his onion farm.
The consent to work was signed daily. If the foreman considered that the prisoner was working well, then he was paid. The Lida detention center was paid 30 Belarusian rubles, while the detainees were paid about 20. Onions were sorted for the Euro-Opt retail chain.
Andrei was detained in February 2024. He was sent to a detention center for 15 days for liking a post on social media. He spoke to journalists about the working conditions.
They brought us to the storage facility. We were in the basement in February, dressed as best as we could. Our hands and feet were freezing. Breakfast was at 7 a.m. and we worked until 6 p.m. without food or drink. The onions were delicious.
According to Andrei, they weren't forced to work, but under Belarusian laws, those sentenced to administrative arrest must pay about $4 for each day of imprisonment. Thus, the money earned in the storage facility was intended to cover the cost of detention, and the prisoners effectively worked almost for free. Additionally, the fact that the detention center received money for providing labor indicates that the Belarusian penitentiary system treats prisoners as its property.
This is just further proof that the labor was forced, despite the young man claiming otherwise in the interview. I'm not aware of any mechanisms to control what is happening in Belarusian prisons.
In Belarus, special conditions are imposed on prisoners for political reasons. The light in the cell is kept on 24 hours a day, and inmates are woken up several times at night. Most cells don't have a toilet or a wash basin, only a plastic bucket in the corner, which must be taken out to the common toilet in the corridor every morning.
For those arrested for administrative violations, there is usually a separate cell. In this cell, there are no bedding supplies, you can't receive parcels, and there is no opportunity for walks. Prisoners are not taken to the shower.
Jörg Dornau started his business in Belarus in 2020, amid mass protests against the Lukashenko regime and the dictator's repressions, which continue to this day. German media accuse him of promoting the interests of Lukashenko in exchange for favorable treatment as an entrepreneur.
There are two conventions on forced labor, of which the Republic of Belarus is a signatory, the 29th and the 105th Forced Labor Conventions. According to the norms of these conventions, detainees can work only with their voluntary consent.
According to an act passed by the Parliament of the State of Saxony, parliamentary members must report their businesses to the authorities. Jörg Dornau failed to do so and was fined 21,000 euros in August of this year. Following the publication by Reform.News Media, German lawyer Ferdinand Müller submitted a request to initiate a criminal case against Jörg Dornau for exploiting people.
In Russia, criminals may join the army and head to war, even during the investigation stage. The Russian Federation Council has passed a bill allowing individuals facing criminal charges to avoid punishment if they agree to fight in the war. The legislation enables suspects to request deployment to the front lines as an alternative to trial. Even those accused of serious crimes, including murder, are reportedly taking advantage of this opportunity with support from state propaganda.
How to avoid going to prison. A step-by-step guide from the Russian authorities. This is how the new amendments to the law could be described. These changes allow even those who have not yet been convicted to evade justice. All they need to do is express a desire to go to war. In the explanatory note, the legislators argue that this initiative aligns with the current state policy. Thus, new horizons have opened up for murderers, thieves and swindlers. There is no longer a need to wait for the end of a trial. Signing a contract with the Ministry of Defense is enough. Hundreds of suspects are eager to take advantage of this unique opportunity, as evidenced by the headlines filling the pages of regional newspapers.
A man accused of murdering a girl in Yekaterinburg requested to participate in the special military operation. A man who brutally killed a girl asked to volunteer for the special military operation. A man suspected of murdering a 35-year-old woman asked to participate in the special military operation.
Those accused of treason, terrorism and pedophilia are not eligible to go to war in place of serving a prison term. However, other categories have been given the green light. For example, in Buryatia, a swimming coach did not wait for his trial to begin and went to war. He was suspected of repeatedly raping a girl with cerebral palsy. In Nizhnevartovsk, Islam Izanbayev was released from custody after being accused of killing a pediatrician, but he signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense and went to the front. Even animal abusers are welcome. In Saratov, the son of the vice-governor went straight to the trenches. Ivan Pivovarov had been accused of killing his ex-girlfriend's dogs.
He grabbed a Yorkie and slammed it against the wall. After that it flew off to this place. Then it whined, wheezed and died.
According to a local publication, Pivovarov's trial had to be postponed indefinitely, as the sadist is now repaying his debt to his homeland in a more preferable way. The new laws also affect government supporters. The pro-Kremlin movement Call of the People reported that the murderer of the deputy chairman of their organization went to fight in Ukraine instead of being imprisoned. Dmitry Matveyev is suspected of killing Anton Egovtsev, the deputy chairman of Call of the People. Associates of the deceased and his widow are outraged, as they had asked the Ministry of Defense not to send the murderer to the front. According to lawyers, when the authorities decide to send to war both defendants and those already convicted and serving their sentences in penal colonies, they do not take into account the opinions of the victims.
In fact, all these bills are designed to free people in exchange for participating in the war. This has nothing to do with the goals of justice, which include the restoration of social equity. These amendments are a welcome for crime. Now, many people, especially those who have committed violent crimes and are a danger to society, know that there is a magic key. If you commit a crime, if you kill or if you rob, all you need to do is sign a contract and you'll be released. In exchange, you'll also receive monetary compensation and become a hero in the eyes of Russian propaganda.
It is unknown how many people have avoided trial through this method. However, in the 2.5 years of war, according to calculations by the Vyorstka media, around 500 people in Russia have already fallen victim to veterans, including former prisoners who have returned to civilian life.
ChasivYar, a satellite town near the now destroyed Bakhmut, remains one of the most tense areas on the Ukrainian front. Russian forces continue pushing forward despite heavy losses in both personnel and resources. The Ukrainian military, struggling with a shortage of artillery, is often forced to defend against Russian assaults using outdated Soviet-era weapons. Ammunition supplies are running low for Ukraine's forces. Stay tuned for our next report from Donbas to learn more about the situation on the ground.
Clinging to the ground and hiding behind the hills, Ukrainian attack helicopters fly in pairs to bomb Russian army positions. This is territory near ChasivYar, a satellite town of Bakhmut. Like Bakhmut itself, it has been practically destroyed by the fighting. These are camouflaged positions of Ukrainian artillery. Several kilometers from the front line, they are trying to stop the Russians from advancing into ChasivYar. Recently, the Russian military has managed to breach a canal that had held them back for a long time.
We planned to hold them back at the canal, but they crossed it a bit. They're climbing and barreling, but we're working with the means we have. We're in control. They use armoured vehicles and aerial bombs. They have more manpower and weapons too. Fire!
The artillerymen fire from an old Soviet self-propelled gun buried in the ground, camouflaged and covered with anti-drone nets. The military says they have no complaints about the gun. It fires properly, but it just doesn't move very well. The undercarriage is old and, despite repairs, of poor quality.
Everything, apart from artillery equipment, is a big minus. Anything related to mechanics is also a big minus. Honestly, the ability to hit the enemy with artillery is fine, but if you're on the move, it's a 50-50 likelihood. It's even more like 70-30 that you can't get from point A to point B.
The Ukrainian military released a video of a recent Russian attack that was successfully repelled. The enemy group nearly gained a foothold in a new area, but then a shell struck.
The infantry were defeated. They were concentrated in one area when there was a direct hit and the house was completely destroyed. This happened in the garage where they were trying to hide.
The soldiers of the Ukrainian army make constant use of drones for corrections, which has allowed the artillerymen to significantly save their scarce shells. Roman is a gunner. He says that over the past 2 years, the situation with howitzer control has changed considerably. Now they don't fire without a drone at all.
Every time we shoot, we use drones. We never shoot blindly. We monitor everything with drones to see where our shots land. At the start of the war, we used to aim the traditional way. We had drones, but they were larger, the big ones. We now use a Mavic to take off and aim. With drones, we can see everything clearly.
Nevertheless, the Russians are still advancing on this section of the front line. Despite their losses, they continue to push against the Ukrainian defenses wave after wave, leaving them exhausted.
That's all for today. Don't miss our next episode of Eastern Europe Review next Sunday. I'm Igor Kuley. Stay with us on TVP World.